What's up guys, welcome to another video, and today we're going to talk about the Dark Raid Beast. Alright, so this is my highest score that I've gotten. This is the team that I used on it as well. Now let's talk about the strategy, like the abilities of the boss. You can see these in the strategy info. Alright, so first off we've got Fauna Despair, which is like sort of the basic move that all the raid beasts have. This one is the one that scales off defense, or based on how much defense you have. So this is why like your frontline units need to be like semi-tanky. They don't need to be as tanky as you would need to have them in R5, but try to give them like a decent amount. I would say a baseline would be about 1k defense. Some exceptions would be like if you have units that have secondary lives, like Filmars, Homunculus, Perna, those sort of units, they can have less defense, right? Because pretty much the main time that you're gonna die to it would be in the very last stage, and in that stage you're really just trying to buy enough time, to kill the boss, right? Or for the rest of the units to kill the boss. But anyway, the next ability here is the unique ability of the Dark Boss, which is Dark Roar. And Dark Roar will well, first off, he will attack everyone, right? And then he'll target one unit in your front line and imprison them, or like basically like take them out of the fight. And what you'll see is there'll be like a hit counter above that unit that got imprisoned, and you have to do enough hits on the boss to take them out of the imprisonment. They'll also get removed out of the imprisonment when the boss switches to the groggy stage. Alright. And the idea is the hit counter, to lower it, you just attack the boss, and multi-hits will also like remove one hit counter per multi-hit. So if you run like a, let's say you happen to be running a Lapis in the raid, it has a triple hit on the first skill, so you'll remove 3 hits from that counter. Alright, then next up we have Dark Rageful Breath. Alright, anything that dies to this won't units that die while they have the Soul Chain effect, which is the imprisonment, they'll die when he uses this ability, which is his last ability. Okay, and they also can't be revived if they die. Now you probably won't be bringing a reviver into the raid anyway, so it's like whatever. I guess it wouldn't matter for units like Perna and stuff that have a second life. But ideally, you probably try to remove this before it happens. You remove the imprisonment before this happens, or you kill the boss before this happens too, or at least for the first couple of non-groggy stages. Another ability to keep in mind is Dark Sweep. Now, some of the other raid bosses have like this sweeping ability, and this one scales off how many turns your units have taken. So for this reason, I don't recommend you to run Violent, not only because it increases the damage that Dark Sweep would do, but also because you're also wasting turns in the groggy stage by doing that. I mean, you might think like you're still doing the hits, right? You're still doing damage, and your damage dealer is doing the damage, but you have to give up stats to put Violent on your unit. You're also not running like a damage dealer set. Like if you're running an equivalent fatal or rage set, then you'll be doing more damage per hit, right? So it makes your turns more efficient. So yeah, you don't want your units to waste turns like that. And yeah, also because there's a limited number of attacks that you can do during the groggy stage, so you want everyone to be using their cooldown abilities as well. So that's also another reason. Alright, so now let's go through the actual fight. Alright, so so I'll show you like the boss in action. Alright, so I'll pause just before he does a Rageful breath so you can see what happens. Alright, so he does the Dark Roar. So the Dark Roar imprisoned my Perna, as you can see. There's a 26 counter on top of or over the health bar, so that means I need to do 26 hits to remove Perna out of the imprisonment. So we're going to start the fight. So you can see that the counters are going down, but the boss will die at least on the first non-growing stage pretty quickly, right? Because he doesn't have much health, and Perna got released from the imprisonment straight away. You also notice that I'm running three units in the front line. Ideally, I would run 4, but it's very hard to run 4 because like my Stella and Tak are both quite squishy, so they're not really that suitable for the front line. And I also don't put the healer in the front line, and I definitely you should definitely make sure you don't do that because you don't want to risk the chance that your healer gets imprisoned, right? Because then you can't heal your team up once you start taking AoE damage, right? Also, I put extra units in the front line because like Xiaolin to me is my strongest damage dealer, and she's also the best suited for the front line because she's the most tanky. I could potentially run Homunculus and the Perna on their own, but if that happens and he does Fauna Despair on either one of them by themselves, they'll definitely die. Alright, so I don't want that to happen, so I run an extra unit in the front line so that at least the damage is spread between 2 units. Okay, assuming that Xiaolin gets stolen. It also reduces the chance that Xiaolin will get stolen because there's extra units in the front line, right? So there's only a 33% chance that she'll get stolen as opposed to a 50% chance if she was there with just like one other unit. Okay, now there's 2 ways to like tackle this boss. One way is to run multi-hits. Now I believe this is like Blizzard, sorry, not Blizzard, this was Come To Us's intention. Initially, like they wanted you to run basically units that you would use in Necro to do multi-hits. Okay, so you can use things like the Liches, Tak, alongside units that have skill 1 multi-hits. I would say those are probably the main ones that are good enough single target. A lot of the other multi-hit units have to sacrifice damage for the multi-hits. There aren't that many good multi-hit units that do good single target damage. Alright, so that means the alternative, which is what I'm doing, is just to run YOLO DPS basically. Just kill the boss before he imprisons all your units and kill him as soon as possible. You also may have noticed that this team is exactly the same as my light team. I actually use the same team for both compositions and also both like areas, and that, to me that's a good thing because it means I can focus runes on these units specifically, and it's like it makes them multi-purpose. Like it allows me to use them in multiple areas. Alright, so yeah, so those are the 2 main strategies. To me, I think people who have actually completed this and kill the boss, they tend to find the most success by just ignoring the multi-hit aspect of the fight and only really pick it up if it just happens to be on your unit. Like for example, Stella just so happens to have a good 3rd skill that has multi-hits. The Wind Homunculus has a 1st skill that has a triple hit, so it just so happens to have that. I mean, ideally I don't really care if they, if it has it or not, but it does, happen to have it. Xiaolin also does some multi-hits from her 3rd skill, and if her 1st skill procs the additional attack for the additional 2nd skill, that's also another way for her to do multi-hits too. And the other bad design flaw is that they have the turn counter on the dark sweep, which means that you can't really be running violent units, because ideally you would be using violent units to get the unit out of imprisonment, right? Because you're doing more hits during the non-groggy stage. But having those two together just makes it counterintuitive, so I feel it's safer to just go for all-out damage. Now, I mean, this is my team. You've probably seen the stats. I'll just show you them real quick though. But these are what I'm using currently on my my raid units, and I'll talk about some of the alternatives that you can use instead of these, because I know not everyone's going to have, you know, Perna, and not everyone will have completed their homunculus, but you can definitely use units, you know, other than that. I mean, Tark is a unit that is easy to get. You know, everyone should have him. The other units are Nat 4s, and I think you have a reasonable chance to have that, like, to get them already. If not, you can always target, you know, try to target them in the summoning stones. You can save up, you know, for their rotation. Okay, so now let's look at the some of the alternatives. One unit I used to use before I got Perna, right, was actually Filmars. So Filmars, you can put him in the front line, because usually for PvP you'll build him semi-tanky. He won't be super tanky, but he'll be enough to survive, you know, until the last non-groggy stage. He should be able to tank a couple of hits for you as well, like, well, large hits. He also has a second life on his passive, so, or like sort of a second life. So that allows him to help you buy an extra turn by having that. He also has a defense break on second skill, and he also has a crit lead if your units aren't maxed on crit. Alright, if you're building your units around like 70% crit rate, then, you know, Filmars will help increase the average damage on that sort of a team. Another unit that you could use, which I personally haven't tested out, but I believe that he will be good for this, and that is Ryan. Okay, so the reason why Ryan is good is he could be a replacement for your Perna, because Perna is kind of mostly there for the attack power lead. But Ryan also has an attack power lead, which is a dungeon based one. That means you can use it for this, because dungeon based leader skills can be used in raid beasts, and it's a universal one. It doesn't mean, like, you don't have to stack a pure element team, so you can use anything you want, and I think that's a pretty good bonus to have. Apart from that, he does just the standard sort of like burst damage. He can be a bit bruisery too, like you can build him as a bruiser if you want and put him in the front line, and he's also got a defense break on second skill as long as he crits. So obviously if you're going to build him, try to make sure you max crit him. Let's see, as I said, the liches are pretty good too. Rigel, Fuko are probably the main ones I would recommend. If you happen to have a Grego, you can also use Grego. But they got first skill, you know, multi-hits. Second skill is also a multi-hit. The second skill for Rigel is a defense break, which is quite nice, and the first skill is a slow. So they also provide pretty decent debuffs. So you could consider using them if you need to. Let's see. Brauk is actually another unit that can do multi-hits. His first skill can proc additional hits, so he also defense break with this as well. So you can use him for this. He's actually not the worst. And his team up allows him to bring another ally to attack as well, and that means they might have like multi-hits as well. And that, you know, there's another way to get your multi-hits in. Another unit that I used to use before I got Perna was Trevor. So I used Trevor when I used to use Filmar's lead, and Trevor is good because, like all other raid beasts apart from water, he can actually just tank the front line and leech a lot of health back if he has vampire set, because his brawlers will activate. He'll take less damage and he'll do a lot more damage as well, and he has pretty good burst damage that way when he does his self buffs. His self buffs crit and also attack power. So he can, you know, leech life back and stay alive. So yeah, you can consider him. I think the main things I want to talk about is actually the light units, because they changed the way that raid beasts work. You now do element like 50% extra damage if you have elemental advantage, but you take additional 50% if you have elemental disadvantage. Unfortunately, both of those rules apply for light units in dark raids, which I feel is a bad design. Because they should be trying to encourage you to bring those units, but at the same time you're also discouraged, and it doesn't make sense to me. But there are definitely some light units you can try to use if you want to try to stack a pure light team or near pure light team. You can run Lin. Lin is a pretty common unit in Dark Raid. She's also a pretty common unit in other PvE areas anyway, especially after pretty much right after they buffed her her damage to like max HP scaling. She's been used quite a lot for like that burst damage roll, and you can definitely use her for this. The leader skill is not relevant, but she doesn't do any debuffs, but she does good single target burst damage. Now the downside to her is that her base stats are very bad, or at least her defensive stats are. Her base defense is really weak, so you may have trouble keeping her alive in the last stage. So I guess that's like, fair warning. If you want to try to use her out, that's up to you, but you probably have to try to make her a bit tankier with HP and defense, and also maybe even give her a vampire set. Alright, so other light units you can use Fami if you happen to have her. She's a very rare unit, only some people have her. She was like a special like promotion code that you have to implement or like input into your account. So not many people have her, but she does have a crit damage lead, which is quite nice. Standard magical archer first skill, and then just like other damage skills. Her skill kit is not as good as the light normal magical archer, which is Chris. Right. So I would prefer Chris over Fami, but you can also use both if you want to. Now the reason why she's good is similar to Fami as well actually. Her first skill has elemental advantage against the dragon boss because he's dark element. And if you've watched my previous guide videos, you'll know that the magic arrow does defense break if you have elemental advantage. So she's good in that regard. She also does pretty decent burst damage too, from her second and third skill. The third skill is also a defense break, so she has multiple ways to do defense break, which is quite nice. Let's see. You can also use Liu Mei. Liu Mei is one of the better Kung Fu girls, and definitely the best to use in this one because she has elemental advantage. All Kung Fu girls have the same first skill, so she's a defense break on first skill, which helps a lot on the groggy stage. Apart from that, she has slow on second skill, but apart from that, she just has like burst damage with her dragon attack. So you can use her if you're trying to stack a lot of light units, or even if you aren't stacking light units. If you have enough vampire units to build her with, and you're using her in R5 already, you can probably also use her in that way for this dark base as well. Also, if you happen to have Faye is also good in this. She's basically the same as Xiaolin in a way, or pretty close to it. Let's see. You can also use the Light Pirate. I actually was testing him out before, and he's pretty good. Does good burst damage. He also has defense break on first skill, which is pretty nice to have. The second skill just good burst damage. The absorb doesn't work here, but he still does pretty good damage with that. And the third skill is a defense break, but it also has a very large multiplier. It's I believe it's 800% multiplier, which is quite a lot for a first skill. Sorry, a third skill on a cooldown, single target. Let's see. You can also use Lucas if you happen to have him. Now, the reason to use Lucas is he creates his own shield, right? And that means it's easier for him to keep himself alive. If you have vampire on him, then it's another additional way to keep himself alive. If he takes a bit of damage, he'll shield himself, and then he'll heal himself as well. He also has a defense break on second skill, so he's a debuffer. And worst case scenario, if you have no other attack power lead, you can also use him. I would probably still recommend you to build the water one instead though, because he has a better leader skill, and you probably would use him in some of the other rifts as well, just for the attack power lead. Let's see. I think those are the main ones. I'm not too sure about Natalie, which is the Dark Assassin, but you might be able to put her to use. She does have a defense break on on her first skill. Second skill is a branding as well. So in a way, she's kind of similar to Stella. So you could use her if you happen to have her. As for the Nat 5s, these are not easy to obtain, but I'll talk about a couple of them which are notable. The Julian does pretty good single target burst damage with his second skill, so you can definitely try him out. Shan also has good single target burst damage, which is Squall. You've probably seen other chimeras like Squall chimeras in action. Teo can pretty much do the same thing as well. Not Teo, sorry, Shan. So I'm getting the names mixed up here. You can also use Jaeger. Jaeger doesn't really have any debuffs that I remember, but he does pretty good single target damage, especially with Justice. Okay, I think those are the main light units I would probably talk about and have recommendations on. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in comments and I'll answer you as soon as possible. Alright, so that concludes the all the new Elemental Raid Beast guides. I'll probably update this again like in the future, but it'll depend on what they change. Like this, I did this lot of guides because they changed the Elemental Advantage thing, and some of the teams were a bit different because of that. But anyway, until next time, thanks guys for watching the video and have a good one. I hope this helps you out. Bye bye.